The War of the Cosmic Titans, the Shattered Universe. The year was 3124. For centuries, humanity had conquered the stars, built great civilizations, and unlocked the secrets of the universe. But their greatest discovery, the Quantum Rift Project, would also become their greatest mistake. At the heart of the Sol system, inside a massive space station known as Eden Prime, Earth's top scientists worked on something no one fully understood: the Rift, a hidden layer of the universe where time and space twisted into infinite possibilities. Dr. Ilias Voss, the lead scientist, stood before the massive containment field. His team had spent years trying to stabilize the Rift's energy. Today, they had finally done it. "Open the gate," Voss commanded. Energy crackled. A swirling vortex of pure quantum chaos appeared inside the chamber. It was like looking into a shattered mirror of reality. Broken images of Earth, Mars, and countless unknown worlds flickered inside. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the alarm screamed. Something was coming through. A blinding shockwave burst from the rift, spreading across the station. Lights flickered, gravity shifted, and then Eden Prime vanished. Across Earth, the skies ripped open. Massive rifts tore through reality itself. Cities blinked out of existence. New York, Beijing, and parts of London simply disappeared. And then people returned, but they were not the same. Men and women who had vanished hours ago stumbled back, their eyes glowing with unnatural light. Their voices spoke in echoes, as if 1,000 versions of themselves spoke at once. "We have seen the end. It is already happening. You have awakened them." No one understood until the first rift-borne ships emerged. The sky shattered like glass, and alien warships phased into existence. They were not made of metal or technology, but of fractured timelines, pieces of alternate realities fused together. Earth's defense forces scrambled. They fired their weapons, but their bullets never hit. The Riftborn existed in multiple states at once. Some attacks passed straight through them. Others bounced off as if they were striking an enemy that hadn't yet arrived. It was madness. The world's greatest generals, scientists, and leaders came together. There was only one question: how do you fight something that exists outside time? Humanity had broken the laws of existence. Now, existence itself was fighting back. The first annihilation. The stars flickered. The void of space trembled, as if reality itself struggled to hold together. Then, without warning, they arrived. The Riftborn. They did not descend from the heavens like invading warships of old. They did not glide through space in majestic formations. They appeared, shifting, warping, teleporting across the battlefield in erratic bursts. One moment, space was empty. The next, they were everywhere. Earth's fleet, humanity's greatest defense, stood in formation. Thousands of warships, armed with the latest in particle weaponry, plasma cannons, and fusion lances, formed a defensive barrier around the planet. When the Riftborn arrived, every commander gave the same order: fire at will. The darkness of space turned into an ocean of light as humanity unleashed its fury. Streams of energy, high explosive missiles, and railgun rounds filled the void. It should have been enough to tear apart an entire armada, but nothing landed. The Riftborn were not bound by human understanding of war. Bullets phased through them. Energy beams dissolved before impact. Missiles detonated, but their explosions consumed only empty space. The Riftborn ships were there, and yet they were not. They flickered, shifting between realities, existing in multiple states at once. And then they struck back. One of Earth's largest battleships, the Indomitable, vanished in an instant. It did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to exist. No wreckage, no debris. The sensors showed that it had never been there to begin with. Panic spread through the fleet. One by one, ships disappeared, their crews erased from time. Entire squadrons fired desperately, but their weapons were useless. They had never faced an enemy like this before. No one had. Earth's leaders watched in horror from the planetary command center. The greatest fleet in human history was vanishing before their eyes. How do we fight something that isn't real? One officer whispered. For every question, there was no answer. Then, deep within Earth's classified archives, someone found a name buried under layers of secrecy, a name that should not have been remembered. Dr. Elias Voss, a scientist who had once studied the rift, a man who had disappeared into it years ago and returned knowing too much. A special operations team was dispatched to retrieve him. They found him in a secluded bunker, surrounded by stacks of notes, diagrams, and strange equations that made no sense. Dr. Voss looked at them with tired eyes. He knew why they had come. "You've seen them, haven't you?" he asked. The lead officer nodded. "They're erasing us. We don't know how to fight them." Dr. Voss sighed. "Because you're trying to fight them with what you understand." He picked up an old piece of paper covered in scrawled notes and chaotic sketches. "If we fight them with what we understand," he said, his voice grim, "we have already lost." The temporal collapse. The world had gone mad. New York City was no longer just in the year 2124. It was also in 1945. Half the skyline had been replaced with old brick buildings, and steam-powered cars roamed the streets next to hover taxis. The air smelled of both burning coal and synthetic fuel. People from different eras stood frozen, staring at each other in shock. A woman in a 1940s dress clutched her purse, her wide eyes locked on a man in a silver spacesuit. Somewhere on an old battlefield, a soldier raised his rifle, prepared to fire. But before he could pull the trigger, he vanished. A second later, his body reappeared, crumbling into dust. The only thing left was a rusted dog tag and the remains of a uniform from decades past. Across the world, similar horrors unfolded. The Great Wall of China flickered between different states, half ancient stone, half futuristic steel. London's Big Ben rang out a time that no longer made sense. Planes vanished mid-flight, appearing again as twisted wrecks from centuries before. Inside the United Nations War Room, Earth's leaders sat in stunned silence. Their plans for resistance were meaningless. How could they fight an enemy that didn't follow time's rules? Surrender seemed like the only option. Then, a whisper of hope emerged. Reports started coming in about a small group of soldiers, men and women who had survived rift exposure. Unlike others who were erased or aged into dust, they remained unchanged. More than that, they could see the shifts before they happened. They moved before time rewrote itself. They reacted before reality collapsed. They were called the Riftwalkers. Sergeant David Carter stood at the edge of what used to be Times Square. He had seen battle before, but nothing like this. One moment, he was standing in 2124, and the next, he was surrounded by giant propaganda posters from the 1940s. The lights flickered between neon holograms and old street lamps. He turned to his squad. There were 6 of them, all survivors of rift exposure. They had no idea why they were different, only that they could feel the shifts before they happened. Carter had learned to trust that instinct. A distant scream made them spin around. A civilian, a young woman, stood in horror as a building in front of her twisted in time. It shifted between a ruined 22nd century skyscraper and an intact 1940s department store. The structure groaned as the two timelines battled for control. Carter felt it before it happened. "Move," he shouted. His squad reacted instantly. The Riftwalkers tackled the woman to the ground just as the building collapsed. But instead of rubble, a wave of distortion passed over them. For a second, they saw another world, a place where the sky was deep red and monstrous shadows lurked on the horizon. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. The squad exchanged nervous glances. They had all seen it. The enemy wasn't just rewriting time. It was replacing reality. "We're running out of time," Carter said, his voice grim. "If we don't stop this, there won't be a past or a future, just a broken world that doesn't belong to us." For the first time, humanity had a weapon, a way to fight back against the impossible. The Riftwalkers were ready for war. The birth of the Riftwalkers. Dr. Elias Voss stood before the towering machine known as the Ascension Chamber. The room was cold, sterile, filled with the hum of energy as the final preparations were made. On the steel platform before him stood 6 soldiers, each ready to undergo the process that could make them humanity's greatest weapon, or kill them. The Riftborn had already wiped out entire cities. Their ability to shift between realities made them nearly impossible to predict. Every battle had been a slaughter. Humanity was losing. But now, with the Ascension Protocol, that could change. Voss took a deep breath and turned to his assistant, Dr. Lyon Carter. Begin the process. A deep hum filled the chamber as the machine activated. Sparks of blue energy crackled through the air. The 6 soldiers, strapped to their chairs, gritted their teeth as the transformation began. Pain, agony beyond words. Screams echoed through the room as their bodies were pulled apart at the quantum level. Their minds stretched across multiple realities. Some saw versions of themselves dying in different timelines. Others glimpsed endless voids of nothingness. Then, silence. 4 of the soldiers slumped forward, lifeless. Their bodies could not handle the shift. Only 2 remained, Sergeant Alex Carter and Corporal Ryan Hale. Alex gasped, his eyes glowing with a faint blue shimmer. He blinked, his vision flickering between different versions of the same room. One where Dr. Voss stood with a gun, another where the walls were burned, another where Lyon Carter was missing an arm. His mind saw time itself unfolding. He had survived. He was no longer just human. He was something more. A Riftwalker. The battle for New Denver was expected to be another massacre. Thousands of soldiers lined up in trenches, waiting for the Riftborn to appear. The aliens always struck first, slipping between dimensions, ambushing humans before they could react. It was a war of ghosts against flesh and blood. But this time, humanity had Riftwalkers. Alex Carter stood at the front lines, his senses stretched beyond the present. He could see the Riftborn before they arrived. Every flicker in reality, every shimmer in the air, told him where they would strike. Incoming, left flank, he shouted. Soldiers turned their guns just as the Riftborn materialized. The aliens were met with a wall of bullets, cut down before they could attack. Again and again, Alex shouted warnings. He knew where the enemy would be before they even arrived. For the first time, humans fought back on equal ground. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was clear. New Denver was saved. Humanity had won its first victory against the Riftborn. But something was wrong. As the soldiers cheered, Ryan Hale, one of the 2 surviving Riftwalkers, staggered. His eyes flickered with a strange purple glow. He fell to his knees, whispering something under his breath. Alex rushed to him. "Ryan, are you okay?" Ryan's lips moved, but the words that came out were not his own. "You think you are the hunters, but you are the prey." The voice was deep, hollow, ancient. Ryan's body trembled, his fingers twitching as if fighting something unseen. His eyes darted, looking at things no one else could see. "Ryan?" Alex shook him. Ryan's head snapped up, and for a brief moment, Alex felt something staring back at him. Something vast, something beyond human understanding. It was not just the Riftborn. It was something deeper, the Rift itself, and it had begun to whisper to them. The war beyond time. The battle had raged for days, but the Riftborn kept coming. Humanity's fleets pushed back against their strange, shifting ships, but the enemy always found a way through. Every time a Riftborn vessel was destroyed, it shattered into fragments of energy, vanishing into nothingness. The war had no clear front. It was happening across dimensions, across timelines, across realities. But now, Captain Elias Carter stood inside the wreckage of a Riftborn capital ship, staring at something that made his blood run cold. The hidden truth. The interior of the Riftborn ship was unlike anything Elias had seen before. Walls of shifting metal pulsed with energy, as if the ship itself was alive. His boots echoed as he moved deeper inside, his squad following behind. The mission had been simple: capture the ship's data core, extract what they could, and destroy the rest. But as they moved through the wreckage, something felt wrong. Sergeant Valdez called out, "Captain, you need to see this." Elias hurried over. The sergeant was standing over a glowing console, its screen flickering between symbols and images. The translator AI struggled for a moment before the words finally appeared in English. Timeline Report 87B. Humanity has fallen. Project Riftborn. Evacuation initiated. The Dark Ones approach. Escape is the only option. Elias frowned. What the hell does that mean? Private Ross, the squad's tech expert, typed furiously on his wrist pad. "Sir, I think this is a record from another reality. This ship, it's not just alien tech, It's human tech, but from a different timeline. Silence fell over the team. Elias shook his head. That's impossible. Ross gulped. Sir, the Riftborn, they're not invaders. They're refugees. The true enemy. The realization hit Elias like a sledgehammer. For months, humanity had fought the Riftborn, believing them to be an invading force from another dimension. But the truth was far worse. Lieutenant Harrow pointed to another file on the screen. Sir, look at this. A grainy video played. A ruined Earth burned beneath a red sky. Cities had been reduced to dust, and massive, shadowy figures moved through the ruins. They were not Riftborn. They were something else. The Dark Ones are here. We lost the war. There is no future in this timeline. We must escape before they consume us. The message ended. Sergeant Valdez cursed under his breath. We're fighting the wrong enemy. Elias took a deep breath. Everything they knew had been a lie. The Riftborn were not trying to conquer their world. They were trying to escape something far worse, something that had already destroyed other versions of humanity. And now, it was coming for them too. A war they'd never started. A sudden tremor shook the ship. The emergency lights turned red. Captain, we need to move. Valdez shouted. Elias snapped out of his thoughts. Ross, download everything. We need to show command. Ross worked quickly, transferring files onto a secure drive. The moment the process finished, an automated voice echoed through the ship. Self-destruct sequence activated. Evacuate immediately. Go, 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 Elias ordered. The team sprinted back through the corridors, dodging collapsing structures and bursts of energy. As they reached their extraction point, Elias took one last look at the Riftborn ship. It wasn't just a warship. It was an ark, a lifeboat from a doomed reality. And now, the enemy that had destroyed their world was coming for this one. As their dropship sped away, Elias contacted Central Command. Control, this is Captain Carter. We have a situation. Report, Captain, a voice replied. Elias took a deep breath. The Riftborn aren't our enemies. They're running from something. Something that already wiped out another version of humanity. Silence. Then, the voice from command spoke again, quiet and grim. Captain, what are they running from? Elias stared at the burning wreckage of the Riftborn ship below. I don't know, he admitted, but it's coming for us next. The Riftborn Alliance. The battlefield was not a place of war. It was a place of madness. Captain Elias Voss gritted his teeth as the world around him twisted. He had fought in many battles, but nothing had prepared him for this. The rift was a place where time did not move forward. It folded, broke, and rewound itself in endless loops. Humanity had no choice. The Unmakers were coming. The Riftborn, once humanity's enemies, had revealed the truth. The real threat did not come from this universe. It came from outside reality itself. The Unmakers did not conquer. They erased. Entire civilizations had vanished without a trace. No ruins, no history, no memory, and Earth was next. So, for the first time, humans and Riftborn stood together. Their war had ended, replaced by an uneasy alliance. But there was no time for trust. The only way to stop the Unmakers was to enter the rift and face them where they existed. The battle began the moment they stepped inside. Voss crouched behind a jagged rock, gripping his pulse rifle tightly. His squad moved around him. Soldiers in advanced armor, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. The Riftborn warriors floated beside them, their shifting, translucent forms pulsing with strange energy. The air shimmered, the ground cracked like glass. Then, the Unmakers arrived. They were not creatures. They were voids in space, black holes shaped like living things. They had no eyes, no mouths, no bodies. And yet, they moved. They hunted. The first soldier screamed as he dissolved into nothingness. 1 second, he was there. The next, he was erased. His squadmates turned their weapons on the enemy, but the bullets did nothing. Lasers vanished into the void. Energy weapons flickered out of existence before they could fire. Voss fired his rifle. The shot never left the barrel. He blinked, and suddenly, he was standing in a different place. His squad was gone. He turned, heart pounding, and saw himself standing a few feet away. The other version of him lifted his gun, fired. Pain exploded in Voss's chest. He fell to his knees, gasping. Blood soaked his armor. The world blurred. He heard voices, his own voice, shouting orders, screaming in pain. Then, everything rewound. The wound vanished. He was standing again, unharmed. The other Voss was gone. "Captain," someone yelled. He turned and saw Lieutenant Mara O'Connor running toward him. Her face was pale beneath her helmet. "We're caught in a time fracture. We have to move." Voss forced himself to focus. The rift was playing tricks on them. It was bending time, showing them futures that had not happened yet, or pasts that never were. "Fall back," he ordered. "Regroup near the Riftborn." They ran through a battlefield that did not obey the laws of reality. Soldiers fought against enemies that flickered in and out of existence. A man screamed as his arm turned to dust, then reappeared. Another soldier fired his weapon, only to see the bullet reverse in midair and strike him before he pulled the trigger. Bodies rose from the ground, reliving their last moments over and over. The Riftborn were not immune. One of their warriors, a being of pure energy, flickered like a dying star before vanishing. Another shifted between forms, screaming in a language no human could understand. Voss saw a burning wreckage ahead. A war machine, something massive and alien, lay in ruins. It had not been there a moment ago. It was as if it had always been there, and never had. He felt something behind him, the presence. Slowly, he turned. It was himself, again. But this version of him was older, battle-scarred. His armor was shattered, his face was burned, and his eyes were empty. "You don't win this war," the other Voss said. "No one does." Then he disappeared. Voss shivered. He had fought many battles. He had faced death before. But this was different. The Unmakers were not just enemies. They were beyond comprehension. "Captain," Mara grabbed his arm, shaking him. "We have to go." He snapped out of his trance. "Keep moving. Stay together." The Riftborn leader, a being known as Kalzoreth, appeared beside them. Its form flickered between solid and liquid, as if it could not decide what it was. "The Unmakers have broken reality here," Kalzoreth said. "Your weapons are useless. Time is a trap. We must use the rift itself against them." "How?" Voss demanded. The Riftborn gestured. A portal opened, a swirling vortex of light and shadow. "We take the fight deeper. We change the rules of existence itself." Voss stared at the portal. Beyond it was something even worse than this battlefield, a place where the laws of time and space were nothing more than suggestions. But they had no choice. The Unmakers were coming for Earth, and if they failed here, there would be nothing left to save. "Move," he shouted, and they stepped into the unknown. The fall of Earth. The sky was torn open. It began with a whisper, a soundless tremor that shook the very fabric of reality. And then they came. The Unmakers. No one saw their ships arrive. No one detected them on radars. They simply appeared, as if they had always been there. Colossal voids in space, darker than the emptiest abyss. Cities crumbled in silence. Entire continents flickered, phasing in and out of existence, as though reality itself could no longer hold them. Earth's greatest weapons were useless. Nuclear warheads were launched, only to detonate in the wrong century. Quantum cannons fired beams of destruction, but the Unmakers were already gone, stepping through slivers of time before impact. The orbital defense grid, humanity's last shield, disassembled itself before the battle had even begun. Then came the screams. Millions of people vanished in an instant, erased from existence as if they had never been. Some were halfway through a sentence before their words dissolved. Some reached for loved ones, only to fade before their fingers touched. Cities stood empty, lifeless monuments to a war already lost. Deep beneath the ruined shell of Washington, D.C., inside a hidden Riftborn bunker, the last survivors of Earth watched in horror. "This is it," whispered Captain Rhea Carter, her voice hollow. "We've lost." Beside her, Riftborn Elder Vesk adjusted the temporal sensors. His ancient face was grim. "We have seen this before," he murmured. "Every timeline, every possibility. Earth always falls. Then what's the point of fighting? General Donovan growled, slamming his fist on the table. "Why make us believe we ever had a chance?" Vesk's glowing eyes turned to him. "Because this time, something is different." The room fell silent. Vesk tapped a control, and the holographic projection of Earth zoomed in. At the center of the chaos, amidst the devastation, one anomaly pulsed with energy. A man. One man. Orion Graves. He ran through the burning ruins of New York, his eyes flashing with temporal energy. Where he moved, time shifted, bullets reversed their course, buildings restored themselves for seconds before collapsing again. Unmakers hesitated, as if sensing something that should not be. "He was never supposed to exist," Vesk said softly. "In every timeline, in every version of history, Orion Graves does not appear." General Donovan narrowed his eyes. "But he's here now." "Yes, and that might be enough to break fate." Outside, the Unmakers continued their work, unraveling reality one moment at a time. But for the first time in all of history, something had changed, and that meant hope still remained. The Infinity Paradox. Orion stood in the eye of the storm, his mind no longer bound by time. He had mastered the rift, but now something even greater stirred within him. He was no longer just a traveler through infinite possibilities. He was a creator of them. With a single thought, he could weave new timelines into existence. The Unmakers felt it. For the first time in eternity, they hesitated. The cosmic beings that had always erased and reshaped existence now faced something they had never encountered: unpredictability. Orion was not bound by the rules of the rift. He was rewriting them. The Riftborn, watching from the edge of battle, knew this was their moment. General Kale, leader of the human resistance, turned to his forces. "This is our chance. The Unmakers are uncertain. We push now, or we die in the shadows of history." A million voices roared in response. Battleships, rift-powered warriors, and reality-forged weapons surged forward. The final assault had begun. Kel watched as Orion moved through the battlefield without touching the ground. Time twisted around him. Bullets and beams of energy bent away, never reaching him. The Unmakers tried to erase him, but the moment they did, another Orion appeared. One from a future he had already created. "You cannot destroy me." Orion's voice echoed through the rift. "Because I exist in more ways than you can erase." The Unmakers screamed, a sound that shattered dimensions. The battlefield shifted between realities. One moment, Kale was leading his troops through a burning sky. The next, he was fighting in a ruined city, then a frozen wasteland, then back to the rift. Time and space had no meaning anymore. But the Unmakers were still strong. They absorbed entire fleets into nothingness. They crushed planets like dust. They erased entire lifetimes in a single thought. Victory was impossible, yet impossible had already happened. Orion raised his hand, and from the void, a new reality formed. A universe where the Unmakers had never existed. It was not just a future, it was real. The Unmakers howled in fury. They tried to consume this new reality, but it resisted. It was no longer part of their domain. Orion had created something outside their reach. "Go," Orion said, his voice calm but commanding. "This war ends now." Kale understood. He ordered his forces to move into the new reality. Humanity, the Riftborn, and all who had fought for survival crossed over. The Unmakers, left behind, screamed as they faded into irrelevance. And then, silence. The rift was gone. Orion stood alone in the void, the last trace of the old war. His body flickered between existences. He was no longer part of just one reality. He was all of them. With a final look at the universe he had saved, he whispered, "Now I begin." And he stepped into infinity, the final rewrite. Orion stood at the heart of the rift's core, the place where all realities began and ended. Around him, the universe twisted, folding into itself, unraveling in endless loops of time and space. The Unmakers stood before him, beings of pure chaos, their forms shifting like liquid shadows, their voices echoing across infinity. This was the final battle. He had fought across countless timelines, defied fate, and survived the impossible. But now, standing in the core, he saw everything, every possible future, every outcome, every end. and in 999,999,999 versions of reality, humanity lost. The Unmakers consumed everything. The earth burned, the stars went dark, the universe collapsed into silence. Again and again, the cycle repeated. Orion clenched his fists, his mind struggling to process the endless waves of failure. He had tried everything, every strategy, every weapon, every alliance. Nothing worked, except for one future, one reality where humanity survived. But the cost was everything. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The Unmakers surrounded him, their chaotic forms shifting, speaking in a language that wasn't sound but pure thought. "You see now," they whispered. "You understand. There is no victory, no escape, only the end." Orion's grip tightened on his weapon. It wasn't just a blade anymore. It was something else. An anchor of reality, a shard of pure possibility. A remnant of the one timeline where humanity survived. "No," he said, "not this time." The Unmakers lunged. Reality shattered. Orion fought like never before. His every move echoed across infinite timelines, creating ripples through existence. Each strike of his weapon was a fracture in fate, rewriting possibilities, shifting the course of destiny. But the Unmakers were relentless. They swarmed him, their forms stretching, twisting, consuming everything in their path. The core pulsed with raw energy, time and space bending under the weight of the battle. Orion knew what he had to do. The single path to victory wasn't through brute force. It wasn't about fighting them head-on. It was about rewriting the core itself. He reached deep into the rift, into the very fabric of reality. He felt the presence of every timeline, every choice, every consequence. And then, he began to rewrite. The Unmakers screamed, their forms flickering. "Impossible," they howled. "You cannot change the end." But Orion wasn't just changing the end. He was changing everything. The rift shook. Timelines collapsed, merged, reformed. In every version of reality, the Unmakers were losing their grip. Their existence depended on the loop, on endless failure, on the destruction of humanity. But Orion had broken the loop. The core shattered in a burst of light. The Unmakers let out one final deafening scream before they were unmade, erased from existence, wiped from every timeline. And then, silence. Orion fell to his knees, his body barely holding together. He had done it. He had rewritten fate. But the cost? He looked around. The rift's core was fading. The battle was over, but so was his time. He had become part of the rewrite. His existence, his name, his story, everything was being erased. He had saved humanity, but no one would remember him. As the last fragments of the core dissolved, Orion smiled. It was worth it. And then, he was gone. The last human. Orion stood at the heart of the rift, surrounded by swirling chaos. The Unmakers roared in fury, their massive forms twisting through the broken fabric of time and space. The war had reached its final moment. There was no going back. He held the paradox core in his hands, a sphere of impossible energy, pulsating with the power of 1,000 realities. The knowledge of countless civilizations, erased by the Unmakers, burned inside it. He had one chance, one decision. Orion took a deep breath. His body ached from the endless battle, his mind close to breaking. He had seen Earth burn. He had seen his people vanish. But he had also seen a future where they thrived, a future that could only exist if he made the ultimate sacrifice. He closed his eyes and spoke the words that would end everything. The core flared, brighter than a dying star. The rift trembled. The Unmakers shrieked in terror as Orion collapsed the rift into itself, rewriting history in an instant. Time bent, reality twisted. The universe screamed. Then, silence. The rift was gone. The Unmakers had never existed. The war had never happened. Orion opened his eyes and found himself standing on Earth. The sky was clear. The sun was warm. He turned and saw towering cities, people laughing, children playing. It was the future he had fought for. Humanity had won, but something was wrong. He walked through the streets, his heart pounding. No one recognized him. No one remembered the war. His name had never existed in this new timeline. He was a ghost in his own world. And then he realized the truth. He was the only one who remembered. Days passed, then weeks. Orion wandered through this perfect world, searching for someone, anyone, who knew what had happened. But history had been rewritten. The rift had never opened. The Unmakers had never attacked. Humanity had lived in peace. And yet, deep in the corners of his mind, a whisper remained, a feeling that something had changed, something he could not see. One night, as he stood on a lonely hill overlooking the glowing city, he felt it. A ripple in reality, a disturbance in the void. Far beyond the stars, in the endless darkness of space, something stirred. A shadow, cold and ancient, moved in the abyss. It had no name, no history. It should not exist, but it did. Orion's blood ran cold. When he changed the future, he created something new. A new war was coming, a war unlike anything before. The Paradox Wars were only the beginning, and this time he was the only one who knew.